He said, I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not hold them back. Bring my sons from afar, my daughters from the ends of the earth. Everyone who is called by name, who I created for my glory, who I formed, I made. You see, we are made and handcrafted by the Almighty God. We can take credit for nothing that we have, even the air in our lungs. We are crafted and molded and fearfully and wonderfully made by Jesus. This is a picture of God calling His family together as if we're a part of His family. We're created to glorify God by reflecting His presence and representing Him in our lives. And the second thing is God's purpose for me is to glorify God. And I thought about this. And I was thinking about how can I not do things on this earth to glorify God when Jesus, all He wanted to do was glorify the Father. Everything that He did to glorify the Father. Even when He called Lazarus out from the grave, how did He pray before? He said, God, Father, I know that You always hear me, but I do it for what? So that the people here can see Your glory. Lazarus, come out. You see, Jesus didn't want the credit. He didn't want people to say, oh my gosh, look at this guy. What He wanted was for people to see the Father through Him. That's what we want. We want people to see Jesus through us because we love them so much. We care for them so much. We want for them so much for them to say, man, that guy must have Jesus in his heart. You see, I think about the time my mom worked at the 7-Eleven and the gentleman came in and he asked for a cup of water. And my mom was there by herself, and it was late at night. And the verse came to her, if you even give a cup of water in my name. So she went and got him a cup of water. You see, when we do something for others, we're not doing it for ourselves. We're not doing it for them. We're doing it for the glory of Jesus.
Amen.
Everything is to be done for His glory. First of all, if He created us, and we're His sons and daughters, part of His family, called by His name, then our life is precious. It is a gift from God, and we need to live it to the best of His glory. Secondly, if our purpose is to glorify Him, then we need to be of service to others. You see, so many of us say, well, what about me? What have you done for me lately? Well, I really don't have time to go to the church. Y'all always are scheduling something when I'm doing something else. Well, stop doing that and come help us. Tomorrow night's prayer night, but I guarantee you we'll have 4 or 5 people in here tomorrow night. I know we all need prayer. The preacher needs prayer. But you know what? Our lives get what? In the way. But I'd love to be at prayer night. There's no place I'd rather be. Yes, it is, because you're going to where you'd rather be. Woo. Toes hurt? Well, I'd love to be, coming to church on Sundays, but Sundays is really my only day I get to sleep. I was up at 6:45 yesterday taking the track team to Christian Newport University. I get up every single morning and drive a school bus. I can say that too. This is my only day to sleep. I didn't get to sleep yesterday. I was up at 5 o'clock. You do what you got to do, but let me tell you my favorite phrase, and my wife will tell you this is my favorite phrase in life. People do what they want to do. If it's important to you, you'll make sure you'll be there. If it's important to you, you'll make sure it's done. Because why? You'll take care of it yourself. Stepping on some toes, man. Mine too. Mine are killing me. I got to take my shoes off. My feet hurt. People ask me, say, Tim, where do you get your sermons from? How do you get your sermons? I read the Bible. Comes out of the Bible. Everything that's in here is not man-made by me, it's man-made by Jesus Christ Himself. When He went through the prophets and put it into the Bible, that's when He says, Tim, you need to preach on it. I got a whole book to tell you what to preach on. There's a lot of people out here to make their own sermons up, and that's great, but I don't want to do that. I want to preach from what God has told me to preach, and that's from the Holy Scriptures. Because I know if I do that, guess what? I can't fail. Because there is no failure in the Bible. None. From Genesis to Revelation, there is no failure in God's Scripture. And Jesus says the greatest commandment is to love me, and only me, but the second one is to love concerned about my neighbors? Am I concerned that if my neighbor was to die today, that he would not be with Jesus for eternity? If you're not, then you have the wrong thought process. We should not have a neighbor within miles of us that we don't care enough about that we should tell about Jesus Christ. You see, this is a dying world that's dying and going to hell. The third thing that I want to look at is we're not always told why we suffer. The Word of God, to the best of my knowledge, never tries to explain the why of suffering. But God does tell us He will work all things out for the good of those who love Him, who have been called to according to His purpose. Romans 8:28 says that. In response to Paul's pleading to have the thorn in the flesh removed, all you hear is the promise of God. And I thought about that, and he's sitting here, and he's got this terrible, terrible, terrible pain in his side. And he's saying, God, can you please take this thorn out of my side? I know that you are God, and you created me. And I know that you can do all things. And look what God says. 2 Corinthians 12:9. My grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. You see, when we are weak, God is strong. When we are at our worst, He is at His best. When we think nothing can happen, He makes it all happen. When we're going through the hardest times, He makes it the best time. You see, I know that I've been through a time in my life to where I was going through the hardest time in my life, and I know how I got through it, and that's with Jesus Christ. Because I know I never got through it without Him. You see, He always shows up. Even when you're going through the hardest time, He shows up. He is a show-up God. He will never forsake you in the times that you ever need Him. If you attend and call to Him and call upon His name, He will answer prayer according to His good will. God's promises are always here to help us to overcome, not to become victims, but victors. Not to become slaves of suffering and pain, but to become masters over them. You see, He has even gone as far as to conquer death, so that we don't have to suffer death. Even though we die, we live because we have Jesus. Max Lucado, in his book called The Applause of Heaven, tells about a young man, Robert Reed, who has overcome cerebral palsy. I love this story. He can't brush his teeth or comb his hair or bathe himself. He can't dress himself or button up his shirt. He has to depend upon other people to do everything for him. He can't even take a walk. He can't go from one place to another on his own power. But his handicaps did not rob him from graduating from high school and finally earning a degree from Abilene Christian College. Max Lucado says that Robert Reed decided that he would study to be a missionary. So he taught a couple of years at a junior college in St. Louis. And then he took 5 trips to different mission fields. Finally, he settled in Lisbon, Portugal. Robert Reed found a hotel owner who would rent him out a ground floor room. He found a restaurant owner who would feed him after hours each day. He found a tutor who would teach him the language, and every day he wheeled out to the city park and passed out Christian literature to people who walked by. He spoke to them in a voice that sounded like a recorded player whose batteries are about to run down. He told them about the love of God through Jesus Christ. In 6 years, Robert Reed won more than 70 people to Jesus. One of them was his young girl by the name of Rosa, who later became his wife. Max Lucado recalls, I sat in the audience of thousands and watched as strong men grabbed his wheelchair and set him up on the stage and lifted him to the platform. I watched him as he took his stiff fingers and tried to turn the pages of the Bible. Along with others, thousands of others, I wiped away tears of admiration. Here is one who have complained, who could have complained. One who could have even been bitter. One who could have asked, why me, God? One could have asked, why do bad things happen to God's people? But instead he said, Robert Reed read in his own drawn-out way the words of God and gave his testimony. And when he came to the end, he lifted up his bent arm that he couldn't straighten out. He looked down to the floor, and then he looked up. And he said, with Jesus, I have everything. This was a man who had nothing, who was crippled, who couldn't get his arms out, had to be lifted up on stage. He said, but with God, I have everything. Lucado added, his shirts are held together with Velcro, but his life is held together with the joy of God. Do you want that joy? I ask that the group come back up.